What is up, Heber? Thank you so much for jumping on the AIM podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go. I'm so pumped about this, man. You know this, man. You're just such a positive person. You're the kind of person people want to be around, talk to, and every time I see you at an event, I'm always excited to say what's up.
Oh, too kind, man. Too kind.
You're probably like this AIM guy, this Playboy guy, whatever you call me, is like you want to get away from me, but I love your positive energy, man. I feed off it.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that.
Let's go, man. How many pancakes have you had today?
Today I haven't had any pancakes. I'll try and have some on Saturday mornings with my boys, but instead we went and got bagels. So no pancakes this weekend.
Okay. Bagels are still pretty solid though. They're not as good as pancakes, but they're
Dude,
up
they're
there.
underrated. I've been on a bagel kick for like 6 months now.
What kind do you eat? Do you eat them plain or do you have a special type?
I'll get one plain with like a really light layer of cream cheese, and then another one with a bagel sandwich with like egg and sausage.
That is good. I love that, man. Let's go. Well, dude, thank you so much, like I said, for jumping on. You guys have created something extremely special with the Buttery Bros, but just all the other works and projects you guys have done, leading up to that moment as well, and continue to do is really special. So I'd love to just kind of start this off by diving in a little bit into your background, kind of your backstory, just before we kind of talk about this stuff and just kind of set the context. So I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of your upbringing and some of your interests, growing up, and how that kind of led into the CrossFit space and also the film space.
Yeah. So a lot of my hobbies growing up, when I was really little, I come from a family of 6 kids. I'm number 5 of 6.
Wow.
And my oldest brother and my grandfather were really into filmmaking and cameras. And when I was like 5 or 6, my youngest age, now I have 2 kids. My oldest brother was like 16 to 18 ish and was making high school skit videos that would play at the assembly. And around this time, a movie called Back to the Future came out, and he recreated a sketch comedy short, basically, where he went back in time to find out how he became such a cool senior in high school. And the younger version of himself was played by yours truly. And so that was my first experience and foray into filmmaking. And I love the process. I love the acting in front of the camera and then watching him go back down to the basement and edit from VCR to VCR downstairs and basically make not just like a home video, but he made a movie. And from that point forward, I've always had this fascination with movies. Simultaneously at the time, I loved playing any and every sport. I wasn't like tied to one sport. I didn't always play team sports either. I loved basketball, but I loved rollerblading. I loved roller hockey. I did karate for a while. I loved running cross country. Like I never really found my niche. And through high school, from that, this was age 6 through then high school. And my senior year of high school, I was doing the same thing he was doing, which was making short sketches for the assemblies at the high school. So I was filmmaking, and that was one big hobby. The other hobby where I spent a lot of my time was I'd finish school. I'd go to swimming for a swim practice. Then I'd go to a boxing gym to throw gloves just as an exercise. And then I'd go home and I'd weight lift. And I just kind of did all things fitness because I just loved working out and being active. And then sometime when I found the sport of CrossFit, it kind of hit me that like, not only do I like the sport, like different sports like basketball, and I played rugby for a little bit, or cross country or track, I just liked working out, And so this was the perfect sport, which was just the sport of fitness, but the sport of working out. And I fell in love with it immediately. And that kind of led to what I do now.
That's awesome. I love that. That's so cool to hear. I just love hearing people's, how the family aspect bleeds into kind of what they do, and hearing different people's stories. And obviously I'm sure you are very close with your brother if he made that impact on you and that way. But that's awesome, man. And the CrossFit space is awesome. And it's cool to see how that is grown. I'm not very deep into that space, and obviously I'm younger, so I haven't really got to see kind of the evolution of the sport like you have. Kind of, I'm sure you have stories about that we can get into later, but that's awesome, man. So leading up to that, you kind of got these 2 interests. You got the filmmaking, you've got the sports, the athletic, the CrossFit space, and you started to blend these 2. What were some early projects where you started to see them come together?
Oh, well, I found CrossFit as just finishing college, and it was an expensive hobby. At the time, paying for a gym membership, I could go to Planet Fitness, and I didn't really understand what I mean, it's a great gym for people that like it, but for me, it wasn't the best fit. But it was a cheap gym and it was affordable. Plus, you got tanning for like 20 bucks a month. Like, it was everything you could ever want. And so now looking back on it, that's probably not the best thing you want to do. Anyways, I would pay for my CrossFit membership by making videos for the gym, whether that was like instructional content that they could put
Wow.
on their blog, or my first big project for them was just making a big commercial. It wasn't really big, but I shot it over the course of like 2 months just so that I could have the excuse of going to the gym multiple times without having to pay for a membership. And so for like, I want to say I paid for like 2 or 3 months when I first started. Then I started doing not contract, but for trade for my videos.
Freelance, yeah.
Yeah. And then CrossFit headquarters at the time, this is around 2009, started seeing my work. And when I reached out to them and just said, hey, I love this sport, I love this community, I'd love to help you guys film people here locally in Salt Lake if you guys ever need some work. And they immediately responded. And so that's my first project. I wasn't like intending to work full-time for CrossFit. I was just trying to get some contract work because my goal at the time was I was working on some documentaries and wedding videos to really pay the bills. And I was just trying to get another like small side project that I could do that seemed interesting. And that was just kind of documenting CrossFit. And so in 2009, I got in touch with them as a company, and the head of media at the time reached out to me immediately after he saw my email. And we had a 4-hour phone call that led to me then working almost, I was a contracted employee for like the next year until I moved full-time down to work for them directly.
What were you kind of experiencing emotionally during this process? I'm sure you were probably freaking out.
Sort of. I mean, I was a big fan of it, but I didn't realize. I mean, I quickly realized the potential and where it was going to go, especially back documenting that specific season. So this was the 2010 season of CrossFit, because I was really in love with the sport. But what I learned that first year of working with them was about the community and what fitness is about. And that was really like the first year and a half. Like, the CrossFit games are a big flash and they're really cool. And it's all about how far the human potential is capable of doing. But then you find out like really what is fitness, and you learn about what the gyms are like, what the community's like, and you really just fall in love with the people. And so I had like zero intention of working with CrossFit full time. Like, I wanted to go to Hollywood and make big feature films and
Wow.
like do other stuff. And this was always just sort of a side project until it kind of dawned on me in like 2013. And I was like, oh, this is a lot bigger than I really should see this through.
No doubt. That's amazing. So post college, your intention, excuse me, your intention was to do something in film. You wanted to be in that space. And then it just kind of, these different opportunities just kind of opened up, and you went after them. That's kind of how it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember for the first like 6 to 9 months of working with CrossFit, the guy that I worked with at the time, Tony, kept asking me every week, like, hey, when can I get you to move to Santa Cruz? When can I get you to move down there? And I wasn't all in. I was like, nah, dude, I don't want to move to Santa Cruz. It's not LA. That's where I want to be. It's not warm enough. It's kind of crappy weather. It just wasn't like an appealing place for me to be. But then as I saw the growth potential of the sport and the business and the community and what CrossFit was capable of doing and transforming people, I put the goals of going down to Hollywood on hold and agreed to move down there to Santa Cruz. But yeah, that was never the intent. I didn't like call CrossFit expecting to get a full-time job out of it. I just reached out to them to do some side work on my journey to go be an actual filmmaker.
I think it's crazy to see how our intentions as humans can be one way, and then God has different things in store, and small things you don't realize can open up and change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
That's awesome, man. I want to talk to you kind of about the creative side of this. So you obviously, I mean, you and your team, you guys are extremely creative. You guys have y'all are very skilled and very gifted in that way. Everything you do is very, very unique. And I think that's amazing. Do you think, where do you think your creativity came from? Like, where do you think the origin was? Do you think you were born like that? Or do you think that's something you developed through just passion for what you do? How do you think you got that?
It's definitely a team effort in terms of what the Buttery Bros are doing. Like Marsden's extremely creative. Julian is also, he's our motion graphics guy and kind of our art director. He's extremely creative. So we have three really creative minds. But for me personally, I see creativity as a muscle that you have to learn to flex and strengthen. And if left unattended, it can wither. I was lucky enough that my dad was very sports enthusiast. He loves, his weekends are spent going to football games. Like right now he's in his 80s and he volunteers to well, he's like when you go to Walmart and there's the greeter at the door, he does that at the University of Utah football and basketball games like that. He just loves doing that.
That's awesome.
He loves sports. So that was instilled into me on one side. And then my mom and my dad's mom also were extremely into the arts. And so my mom forced me to play the cello growing up, forced us to go to like plays. And so I grew up in my summers going to like the Shakespeare Festival, and really interesting and creative different worlds of physical versus creative. And so I credit a lot of that creative side to what my mom and dad were doing, with specifically my mom and interacting with us in a very healthy, artistic way. And then also, like I said, my brother got me into filmmaking and seeing, he went on to become a lawyer. And I always was like, why didn't you pursue this? Until, I guess that's not true. My senior year of high school, it dawned on me that I could be like, you could make money making movies. Like it wasn't just a hobby. Until that point, it was always just a hobby that I could do for fun. But then that year it dawned on me that like, oh, I can make a living doing this. Maybe I don't want to be a stockbroker. Maybe I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to make movies and I don't care if I make money doing it. It's a passion and it's fun. And then figuring out how to monetize it was a whole nother creative process as well. So I think there's two sides to that. This is a long answer, but growing up, being lucky enough to have parents that pushed it on me. And then now as an adult, looking at my passions and finding ways to be creative about how to expand my artistic reach and portfolio.
Yeah, that's actually a really good answer. Just kind of summarizing. So you think it's like basically it's a balance of both exposure, but also effort, energy, and action into what you're doing. And just kind of the blend there is what's created the high level creativity.
Yeah, so my siblings, we all had the same parents and we all pretty much did the same thing. But my three oldest, two are lawyers. My sister is she's a mom and then has continued to be a really incredible harpist. So she does it every now and then because she'll circle back to that. And then out of the three youngest, one's a business consultant, and then me and my younger brother have really pushed that artistic side. He's a composer down in Hollywood and works on really big budget movies and video games. And I make now YouTube movies and documentaries.
That's so cool, man. I love that. I bet y'all have fun family reunions. I bet y'all get together and that's so cool. That's awesome. Hey, was there ever a moment where you had doubts of your ability of, your trajectory as in this industry? Like, did you ever have a moment where you're like, I just don't know if this is actually going to work out? Or did you always have that passion, that fire, that drive where you're like, I'm going to figure out no matter what?
Well, I think yes and no. I mean, deep down, I think like, as I'm getting out of college, you have the fear of like, okay, is going to Hollywood really going to work? And maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't actually pursue that 100%. Like I hedged my bets by taking contract work locally and then figuring out like I got engaged towards my senior year of college. And so like making sure that my family life was going to be set up. And it wasn't just me that I had to worry about. I had to worry about me and my wife. And so, yeah, maybe there's some little hesitancies there, but I wasn't worried that I wasn't going to make money being creative until I wasn't worried about money. I was more worried about being creatively fulfilled. So like the first 2 or 3 years I worked for CrossFit, my job was like my first big assignment was create a news show that covered the sport. And so we created this like TV web show called, what do we even call it? The Update Show or something like that. It was some news show that ran every week on CrossFit's Instagram, or not Instagram, they didn't have that at the time, YouTube. So we put up YouTube videos every week of this news covering the sport and what was going on in the community. Yeah, it was called The Update Show. I'm totally spacing right now. And then then that led to me being like in charge of the live broadcast. So now I'm sitting in a production truck looking at 50 screens saying, hey, camera one, get ready. We're coming to you. All right, camera one, take camera one, camera two, pan over here and get this shot. And I'm directing all these live cameras and producing TV shows for ESPN. But that was very much like not what I wanted to do. I don't watch a lot of live sports. I watch movies. Like that's not my entertainment. I was just kind of like doing what I was told to do, as opposed to seeing what I wanted to do and create the kind of content that I watch personally. And so CrossFit was a really open company. They were really interested in developing young talent and giving people opportunities like myself. And so when I said like, hey, I'm not really fulfilled here doing that job, like I just am unhappy. And if I continue to do this, I'm not going to be working for this company much longer. Is there other ways to utilize me? They were extremely open to that and let me then go kind of on a journey, because I'd put in hours. Like I killed myself from 2010 through 2012 producing those shows. I put in long nights, like sleeping 4 hours a night at the office from 9 a.m. till 4 a.m. every day. Like those were gnarly times. So I put in my sweat work, but then that opened the door for me to be able to kind of lead my own path there and find my destiny of what I was able to do. And from that point forward, I didn't ever worry about money because I had this salary. It was just about creatively trying to find happiness.
I love that.
Happiness in a career. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I think, I want to pull something out of that, because
Sure.
I think a lot of times, and you've been like a living testament and an example of this. A lot of people are scared, especially like people my age, getting out of college. They want to be comfortable. They want to go where they think they're supposed to go, but they deep down have a desire, have a passion to do something different. I think there's so much truth and so much value in betting on yourself and just believing that hard work and your passion and the alignment there, assuming it's in God's plan and it's kind of where you're headed, like it can be such a valuable thing down the road, but you have to go through that phase of where it probably was a little bit uncomfortable. There's probably not everything's lined up the way it looks in our head. I don't know if that's something you experienced, but I mean, it sounded like as you kind of got into it and progressed and worked, things started to shift and mold and become more clear.
Yeah. And so when it became a time where you would think that it would be sketchy, like I think my business partner was really worried. So in 2018, fall of 2018, CrossFit made a huge change as a company, and they let go of their entire media wing and changed the entire direction of the sport. I think they thought that the sport was getting too much attention. They wanted to put their focus as a company and energy on the basics of what CrossFit is. And so they let go of all of like 70 people that worked in CrossFit and their media and the game staff. They lowered that to like 2 people that worked in the media team.
Wow.
2 to 1. And Mars and I, we worked making documentaries for CrossFit. And so I saw pretty early on that our job wasn't going to be there very long. And we were let go in October of 2019 or 2018. And in my head, it was never like, oh, am I going to be successful doing this? It was never that, because I had already been successful and I had done that for somebody else. I'd put in all that sweat equity and built someone else's company. And then my reward was being let go and kicked out the door. I took that same mentality and put it towards my own business. And I said, okay, well, if I can do this for somebody else, it will be successful if I put that same energy and creativity into my business. And so that's really when I bet on myself and bet on what I was capable of, and starting our journey in 2019. So 2 or 3 months later, we launched our YouTube channel called the Buttery Bros, which we didn't intend to be what it is now. It was always just supposed to be a behind the scenes of what we were working on. And that grew really incredibly, as well as producing 2 of our own documentaries since then as well.
That's incredible. So what's the origin story of you and Marston's relationship?
So early days of CrossFit, I was working, I was living here in Salt Lake City. I live in Salt Lake now. I've moved away and come back. He lived locally here in Salt Lake, and his girlfriend at the time was competing at a CrossFit event. And so he wanted to go out and film it. I was like the representative from CrossFit headquarters and had control of who had access to the competition floor. At least that's what people thought. I didn't really care. I didn't even know if someone could or couldn't get on the competition floor. But like, I told the event organizer that, hey, this guy's with me. because he had come up to me and said, "Hey, is there a way I could get access to the competition floor? I'll share my footage with you." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll tell him that you're shooting with me and that you're giving me the footage, and just come by my house later this week and give me drop off some footage on a hard drive." So that was my first interaction with Marsden. He filmed with me that weekend. He came by my house like 2 days later and dropped off a hard drive with footage that was not only well shot, but it was extremely well organized and like well thought out in like delivering the content to me.
Well,
And made my editing way easier. And so, and we got along in those two interactions. And so I said, "Hey man, like I just started working with this company, CrossFit. They're awesome. They're really fun. If you want to keep shooting that kind of stuff, I'll put you in touch." And so I put him in touch with CrossFit. I ended up not really seeing him for like 4 or 5 months. And then I got him hooked up on some other gigs that we were working at the time. And then when I moved down to Santa Cruz about 9 months later, he and I continued to kind of go back and forth and be friendly on just via text and seeing each other every now and then at the CrossFit events. He was one of the first people that I thought of when we needed to build a team to produce not only our update show, but the ESPN shows for CrossFit. And so he agreed to move down there with me full time. And he tells it that I was kind of the guinea pig to go down and see what Santa Cruz is like and see if this was worthwhile. And so he moved down in 2011, and then we became really good and close friends, working really close for the next 8 years at CrossFit headquarters.
that's amazing. And then I want to dive into like the formation of the Buttery Bros, kind of the inspiration. One, how did you guys come up with the name? And two, what was the original intent and purpose behind what you guys created?
So yeah. Okay. So the Buttery Bros is like, it's this weird, fun brand, right? Like we've turned it into this kind of insane, weird thing where if we see some people that know who we are, like I got out of my car the other day at Dick's Sporting Goods, and there was someone waiting. They had seen me in my truck. I have this big, bright blue and yellow Buttery Bros truck. And I got out of my truck and I was walking into Dick's Sporting Goods, and this guy looked at me and starts litter boxing like this. If you're watching, but basically you move your hands like a cat digging the litter box. And that's a sort of a dance that Buttery Bro fans do now that if they've watched enough of our weird shows. Anyway, so the name Buttery Bros came from when we were working together at CrossFit. We would like nail a shot. It would be well composed. It'd be super smooth. It would be in slow motion. And you'd be like, "Hey guys, come check out this shot. It's super buttery, dude." And you'd go around the camera and look at it and be like, "Oh, that is Buttery Bro. All right, see ya." And then when we were starting our company, like we were like, "What do we name this?" And we came up pretty quickly with the name Buttery Bros, but we didn't want to just be like, we didn't really think like our focus wasn't the YouTube, but we had other focus, which I'll get into. But we wanted, I was like, well, it can't be just bros, because what if we hire girls to work with us? Like, it's 2019, bro. Like, we can't just be guys. We can't be a bunch of frat boys. And so our official company name is All Butter, because we shoot all butter all the time. But our YouTube is just Mars and I, and we're the Buttery Bros. And our YouTube, we started, like I mentioned earlier, it was really like, I had been filming with a bunch of these athletes, and one named Brent Fikowski in particular, I filmed with, and while working for CrossFit, and I created this YouTube show called Road to the Games, and he was featured on an episode, and he went out of his way on his social media to promote it. And I was like, "Oh man, thank you so much for promoting it. It makes such a big difference when the athletes get behind the content." And his response was, "Hey, no, man, like you guys are coming out here. You chose to come film with me, which is really cool. And now I have a piece of content that I can show my grandkids when I was at my peak and when I was doing really cool things." And in my head, I was like, wow, yeah, that's a really cool philosophy. I kind of want that for me, like I want to be able to show my kids cool things that I'm doing. And I want to be able to show my grandkids like things that I did. And so we started this sort of just as like a behind the scenes, like legitimately the first episode we did is called Acid Bath in Matt Fraser's Garage. And it was January 1st, 2019. We had gotten a last second call to go to Matt's house to film a commercial for a brand that I can't really go into because it didn't end up working out for him. But we filmed this entire commercial over the course of 2 days. And then in our free time, when we were not on the clock, we just pulled out the camera and documented our own little goofing around while we were there. And we thought this is kind of fun. let's just put it up on YouTube and see what happens. And then it's spawned from being like this. We would go to events. So like you and I just saw each other at Wadapalooza. In Wadapalooza in 2019, we shot like 6 projects. We were there creating a highlight video for Wadapalooza, the event. That same, we were there being hired by a CBD medic or some CBD company. I forget the name of it now. To shoot a highlight video of their booth and an interview with their CEO. And then we had a sketch comedy series called Danny Broflex that we shot an episode with Dan Bailey and Matt Fraser. And then we had our own, and then all of this was to fund what we were trying to do that year, which is a docu-series about the 2019 CrossFit Games season. And then on top of that, now we're adding on the Buttery Bros. And to make it fun, I was like, okay, we got to keep it really simple. So we'll produce 2 episodes out of here. So we had 7 things that we were trying to do while we were there on site. And that quickly became something that we were like, we can't sustain that. That's unsustainable. Which of these do we want to do? And it came down to like, well, if we could just do the Buttery Bros and make our movie or our series, that would be the best situation. So flash forward like another month and a half later, we had made like 3 episodes or 4 episodes by this point. We did Acid Bath, 2 at Wadapalooza, and I guess our 4th one was London. So on episode 4, we tried to make it something that where we could turn it into a business, or we could get a sponsor, and we couldn't get any sponsors to agree to work with us. And we couldn't get events to get us to be at their place. So we were just struggling all over the place because we hadn't really provided a proof of concept yet. And so we decided to max out our credit cards, go to London for the first week of the CrossFit Games Open and a CrossFit Games it was the sanctional. That was the term at the time where you could win this event in London and it would qualify you for the CrossFit Games that summer. Gotcha. And so we were going to document that for our docuseries. We shot some commercials for a couple of brands while we were there. And then also we did a Buttery Bros show about that week's CrossFit Games Open. And we intentionally made it look extremely professional. We took it to another level. We shopped it to some sponsors. And by the next week, we had sponsors agreeing to come on board and work with us. And since that 5th episode, basically, we've had brands associated with the Buttery Bros show in some capacity, except for 1. So out of the 136, we've had 131 of them sponsored, which has been incredible.
What does that even look like when you're having those conversations? Like, is it you're just saying, let's work together, let's figure out a way to make this make sense for you guys, and then you guys just give them credit as kind of the sponsor of the video?
Well, we didn't want it to be just we didn't want it to just be like, hey, here's this episode is provided by Whoop, buy their product, like we wanted it. Like, I don't think that's good. Like, that's not a win-win for anybody.
Right.
We wanted to only work with brands where both parties had a benefit and it wasn't just a check. Like, it needed to be incorporated into the show in a really either educational or humorous way. Mm-hmm. And so when we would talk to brands, it would be like, I remember the first brand agreed to it was RPM jump ropes. And I was like, look, guys, we have historically at the CrossFit Games Open, there is always a double under workout. And so we'll get back from London. I think I emailed them from London. I said, we'll come by your offices next week. We'll build out a custom jump rope and we'll just film a segment. And whenever they announce double unders in the CrossFit Games Open workout that week, we'll incorporate this scene into that show. Mm. And they were all about it. So we went by their headquarters. We designed a jump rope. We had it printed out. And we showed what they were capable of doing as a brand and highlighted their product. And then we highlighted how we use the product in a workout that actually that week. So like we filmed that segment thinking that sometime in the next 4 weeks, the next day double under showed up in the workout and it went into that next show. And it was, it was then quickly when brands saw that, like, hey, this isn't just like a logo just slapped at the end of the beginning of the video. Like, it's really incorporated. People were able to see that a number of things, our passion behind what the product was and that we're excited about it in general. Like, I'm a consumer. I like to get new fun things. And then I like to show my audience like what I'm excited about. And they too seem to get excited about it as well.
No, that's so valuable because everything you guys have done, and it just looks so genuinely authentic. And I know it is because that's who you guys are as people. But that's helpful to know as people navigate that space, like everything you guys have done, because y'all are working with a lot of amazing companies. And so I was curious about how you went about that. And I'm sure there was some strategy involved where you guys would only seek out, companies you aligned with.
Yeah, I mean, we get approached pretty regularly by all kinds of companies, and luckily enough, we're in a position where we can be selective and work with brands that we really like their energy, and it's a combination of both seeking out brands or brands finding you to find a nice happy medium of uh, everybody winning as part of the production.
For sure. So I want to kind of dive into the development of the brand. So you guys started out posting content on YouTube. You guys were kind of documenting the behind the scenes of all the projects, the different things you were working on. Where did you guys start to see, gear, apparel, product? Like where did that kind of start to develop, and what was kind of the reasoning or the push to do those things?
Let me ask you, by gear or product, are you talking about like our own product?
Yes, sorry. Yeah. Like when you guys started to develop your brand and started to go into different avenues and different departments, like how did those things come about?
Whew, so we, for the first like 6 months, we were so in over our head that we didn't even think about it. Like we put up a t-shirt through somebody else's website, and it did like okay, but it was a lot of work, and it just didn't seem like people were gravitating towards it. And so that was like the middle of March. So it was like month 3. And then we just stripped it. We were like, yeah, let's not do that anymore. So we pulled that down, and we just worked for like, still for the first 5 months, we were doing, anytime we would go somewhere, it would be like commercial work, documentary work, and Buttery Bros work. And slowly we started to like strip the commercial work out, because that's where we would have the biggest headache, and where we would let brands down. Like we would get to a shoot having not slept because we were at an event all weekend, editing our Buttery Bros show. And then like the next day we'd get on site for a commercial for like a drink company, and they would be happy with the product, but I wasn't happy with it because it wasn't like, it didn't feel like I was at 100% or operating at my highest level while in production. And so I wasn't always confident. And I was like, these are turning out okay, but we're getting lucky. At some point we could drop the ball and it would be bad for everybody. Let's just remove that. Like the second you're not passionate about it, strip it and get focused on your passions. And so around, we met this guy named Ken around April. Yeah, because he sponsored an April episode. And he had this company called Wad Bomb, which was one of those subscription boxes where you pay like $20 a month or $30 a month, and they stuff it full of stuff and they send it to you. And he wanted to produce a Buttery Bros t-shirt to go into his box. And we were like, well, we don't want to produce a t-shirt. Like we don't have someone doing that. And he's like, well, no, I'll print them. I'll make them. We're like, okay. So we did it. And the boxes did incredibly well for him. I wasn't sure the numbers. I just got the fee for being the marketing for that month. And then he came back and he said, hey, I want to do this again. And it was like 2 months later, a month later, like it wasn't much longer. He wanted us to do this for his June subscription box. So we said, okay. We did it a second time. And from that second time, he said, look, like you guys have tripled my business in this short period of time with like your fan base. What if we just sold your t-shirts? And I was like, well, like we did that. It didn't work out that well. Why don't you, if you want to do that, like I don't have the bandwidth. I know where my energy is and I don't want to be a t-shirt guy. How about you come to me with a proposal of what that looks like? So he came back with a proposal. We liked it enough and we signed it. And from that point forward, like our t-shirts did incredibly well the next time we did them. And then we put out a second t-shirt that did really well. And that just opened a whole new revenue stream for our business, where the thing I'd kind of forgot was that like fans want to rep that. Like if you're not making those, you're taking away an opportunity from them to help you.
Yeah.
And not only are they giving you money for a shirt, which is, like, that's cool. I'm happy that they're doing that. But what's cooler is that they're wearing it and like rocking the brand and starting conversations about the Buttery Bros by people just seeing our weird, incredibly cool graphic t-shirts.
It is awesome.
And helping us by having conversations about the Buttery Bros and having our brand be out there. And so from that point forward, we're all in on those and figuring out how to maximize cool things for people to be repping the brand with.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's cool to see like one of my buddies actually, so we started this brand when I was playing college basketball at Western, and my friend that actually designed the logo, put it all together, ambition of mine, aim. He's a CrossFit coach at the local gym in our town, and he's the one who actually told me about you guys way, like, this was probably 2 years ago. And he's like,
Awesome.
he always wore your stuff, had your shirts, like, it's so cool. And I mean, he's gonna love this episode, um, but it's so cool to see the evolution of that. And also, like, not only are you guys, and I'm sure your motives are to help people, to entertain, to bring positivity, which is just kind of like the last thing I want to talk to you about, but also you're able to create this awesome community of people. And through that, I just think it's such a cool experience and opportunity what you guys have done.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we love what we do. We love the biggest thing that I learned when being let go from HQ was that CrossFit is bigger than HQ. It's the community that really stands out, and we're lucky enough that we've been able to pull a really niche audience out of that. Of like, anytime I go somewhere and I meet a Buttery Bros fan, we're instantly like, I know what their personality is because I know what they're into, and if like I would watch my show if I wasn't on the show, like it's the kind of thing where I would watch anyways. And so if you're into what we're doing, you probably have a similar lifestyle to me, and we'll get along.
That's amazing. What's the future of Buttery Bros? Where are you guys headed? Do you have any exciting projects you'd like to talk about, or anything you guys are working on, or what's new with the Buttery Bros?
Well, we've leveraged that to be, so multiple answers for that. In terms of us as a business, we started other businesses. Like we launched a supplement company called Podium, which is available nationwide in GNCs now. We partnered with Matt Fraser, the 5 times CrossFit Games champion, on that, and that's been a really fun business to help develop simultaneous to the Buttery Bros. The Buttery Bros is where we put 95% of our energy and focus into growing that. We just see a lot of freedom in being able to control what we say and where we say it by being our own entity. And so a lot of our focus is going to grow our YouTube channel, which up until basically up until July or August of 2021, it was sort of a side project to our documentaries. Like, our documentaries were the #1 focus. Now we're able to like just put our time and energy into the Buttery Bros show. And we've played with different formulas. We've played with different show formats and types of content, and we've found really great success doing that and figuring out how to grow that channel. But that's where our energy is going. And then just continuing to inspire other people to find, like, the documentaries we made are really cool. They're like the tip of the spear of what is human being possible. The Buttery Bros show is like for the general population, like we're kind of, I like to think we're kind of everyday people, especially when you contrast us with like a Justin Medeiros or a Tia Claire Toomey. We're like, they kick our butts in workouts, but like we work out so hard to just be like average in the sport. And so we want to inspire other people to be like, oh, maybe I don't need to be a Tia Claire Toomey or a Matt Fraser or Laurel Horvath to be really good at this sport, or healthy or happy. Like, I can just go do this and pay attention to my food, and I can still eat, a dessert every now and then. But if I focus on the right things, I can have a happier, healthier life and better relationships with my family and friends as a result of that, and more energy and just a better life overall. And so that's kind of where our focus is now, and why we've taken our energy so much off the documentaries and more on the Buttery Bros show, is because I think it has a broader reach and it's just so much fun.
That's awesome, man. I love that. How extensive is the preparation process, the planning process of, like, I'm sure you guys have episodes and content planned out for a long, long time. And I'm like, how detailed do you guys go? How granular is it?
That's it. You'd be surprised by our answer, and it depends episode to episode. So like, honestly, we're mapping out next week's episode still, and we'll be making alterations to it until we're actually like in the middle of production. We'll come up with ideas. Back in 2020, we had a whole like 6 months planned out, and we were going to be in Europe. We were going to be all over the world, from Australia to London to Uruguay to Bali to the Bahamas. Like I was not going to be home a whole lot, and thankfully COVID hit. Say that tongue in cheek, but like, it worked out really well for me, which was like, I had all these amazing plans and we knocked it, like we had really good organization, but it was like, I wasn't going to see my family or my wife and for like weeks at a time. And so then we had to pull dramatically back and figuring out what we're going to do this week during the COVID and what are we going to do this time. I shouldn't say that word. That might not help I get like muted on social media.
No, you're good. You're good.
Anyways, so we tend to plan week to week, and sometimes we'll get ahead. Like Marsden had surgery at the beginning of February. So we were like, oh, he's not gonna be able to travel in an airplane for 2 weeks. So let's go plan out these 2 episodes. And we shot the Brooke Wells twinning episode and then the Rich Froning one. And then while we were in Salt Lake, I had an idea to shoot an episode that we're dropping tomorrow. So probably about the same time this podcast, I don't know when it's coming out, but called, I did 1,000 burpees for time. And
that's crazy.
So that will be up. And we had like, we planned that sort of as we were going, like an hour before we started shooting, we were coming up with ideas of what was going to happen in the episode. So episode dependent, we'll have really good plans for some, and others we're shooting from the hip and hoping that we can come up with great ideas and content and hooks and inspirational stuff. But like, generally it's sort of just a documentation of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis with some direction in terms of a story arc.
That's so cool, man. I love just picking people's brains that are doing it at a high level and just kind of depicting and just getting into like how they process their system. But that's super cool. How do you balance the travel with your family and everything? Because you're all over the place, obviously. And I know you're really, you love your family and they're a huge part of your life. So how do you balance that?
That's definitely hard to do. And I've asked a lot of people that do similar stuff with me, like, how do they do it? Because no one, honestly, like I work with some incredibly talented people. But I tend to be the only one in most of the circles with a wife, and even more so the only one with kids. Like some have a partner or a girlfriend, but very rarely am I interacting with someone with 2 kids as well. So when I get to someone that's doing something similar, I always pick their brains. And some of the common things that I hear back are, always be present when you're home. Like I have a hard time of not putting my phone away, but I'll try and put my phone away. And then one-on-one time with people. So like I try to take my wife out at least once a week. And then my kids, I try to have, we call it Dude's Day, where I just basically kick my wife out of, she doesn't get to hang out with us. She gets to have FOMO, but we get to go do whatever it is the boys want to do. And like last week we went to breakfast. I picked the breakfast spot the night before. I said, hey, we're going to go to this restaurant. And then from there, you guys are going to pick what we're going to do. And so that we left there and they're like, let's go wash the car. And then we went and then I was like, what next? And they're like, let's go to Get Air. So then we went to a trampoline park, and then they wanted to play video games. So we played video games, and then we went home, and I was like, okay, we've done 3 things that you guys want to do. It's Daddy's turn. We're going to go squat. And we went in the backyard and we loaded up barbells and we squatted. And then we put that away, and they were like, we want to go get pizza. And we went to the pizza place, and there was a long restaurant. And so then the 3 of us wandered out, and we found this, another, like basically like a virtual arcade place. It was crazy, but this really fun place where we just played. And so trying to do things like that, where they get to have some power and some say in what we're doing. But really the idea behind it is creating activities where we're creating memories that stand out for them.
That's good.
And so trying to set a precedent so that when they're with me, they have my attention, they have my really my attention, and we together as a family will find ways to create memories.
I love that. That's something my mom always talks about, is being very intentional, and it's all about like quality over quantity, and just having those really good moments together. That's awesome, man. You're an incredible dad, and obviously you're helping so many people through the Buttery Bros. So it's cool to see kind of how you balance both. Amazing opportunities to lead and impact.
Thanks, man.
Awesome, dude.
Fun job.
Yeah, you've been incredible, man. Thank you so much for this time. My last question, just wrapping this thing up, is kind of, if you could give yourself one piece of advice looking back, being reflective of like your whole timeline and journey so far. And I know you probably are in the mindset of you still have so much more to do and continue to help and grow, but is there one thing that kind of sticks out to you that you not necessarily wish you'd have done differently, but just something you'd have been more aware of or conscious of as you were younger?
That's a heavy question. I think I think what I would tell my younger self is to invest and believe in you,
Mm,
and build a life, and figure out life goals that you want to accomplish for you, not for somebody else. Like if your life goal is to, like, speaking of family and balancing time, like I think there's times where my wife is probably a little envious of like a typical 9 to 5 work husband that's always home at 6
yeah.
p.m., always available with the kids, can is in town, isn't traveling 1 week out of every month minimum. Um, like, but I wouldn't be happy doing that. And I wouldn't be a happy husband, and I wouldn't be a father doing that. I would hold grudges, and I just assume, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, find what you're excited about, find what you're passionate about, and dive in.
That's good. I love that. Thank you so much, man. That's great advice, man. You have been incredible. Just someone to look up to, and just kind of see how you've grown your platform and helped people, man. And I can't thank you enough for all your positive energy, man. I'm huge on meeting people that have that energy.
Thanks, man. Good to talk with you, Doug.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.